the murder of millions of people. The court expected a monster, a demon in a suit, someone whose face would confirm what they already believed, that to organize an atrocity, you must be a special kind of evil. What they got instead was a clerk. Adolf Eichmann spoke in clichés. He could not finish a sentence without reaching for some borrowed phrase, some official slogan, some pre-packaged thought he had picked up from the system and never once examined. A philosopher named Hannah Arendt sat in that courtroom watching him, and she wrote down a conclusion so disturbing it got her exiled from her own intellectual circle. She said the most dangerous thing about this man was not his cruelty. It was that he could not think, not that he wouldn't, that he had lost the equipment. And Arendt was careful, almost surgically careful, to say this was something by no means identical with stupidity. It was worse. It was a person who had handed his entire mind over to something outside himself and stopped checking whether any of it was true. She called it thoughtlessness, and she warned that it spreads through a culture like fungus. She had no idea what was coming. The economist who measured the dark. 15 years after that trial, an Italian economic historian sat down to do something almost no one in his field would dare. He decided to study stupidity as a force, not as an insult, not as a joke, as a measurable structural threat to civilization, one he believed was more dangerous than crime, more dangerous than the mafia, more dangerous than any army. His name was Carlo Cipolla. He taught at Berkeley, and the slim essay he produced, barely 60 pages, has quietly become one of the most unsettling documents about human behavior ever written, precisely because it refuses to flatter you. Most people who quote Cipolla treat his work like a clever party trick, a way to categorize the annoying people in their office. They miss the knife buried inside it, because Cipolla wasn't writing about individuals. He was writing about what happens to an entire society when the thinking class shrinks and the thoughtless class swells. He was describing the exact mechanism by which a civilization rots from the inside, not through war, not through invasion, but through a slow, silent change in the ratio of who is actually using their mind and who has quietly stopped. And here is what should make the hair on your arms stand up. He wrote it in 1976, before the internet, before the smartphone, before a machine existed that could do your thinking for you on demand, 24 hours a day, in your pocket, for free. He saw the disease. He never got to see the accelerant. The 4 people in every room. Let me give you Cipolla's map, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You will start sorting every human you meet into these 4 boxes within the hour. Cipolla said that every action a person takes can be measured on 2 axes. Does it benefit you, and does it benefit others? Run those 2 questions against each other, and every human being on Earth falls into one of 4 quadrants. The intelligent person acts in ways that benefit themselves and benefit others. They create. They build. When they win, the people around them win too. This is the rarest and most valuable creature in any society, and they are responsible for nearly everything good that has ever been built. The bandit benefits himself at your expense. He takes, he steals, he cheats, he extracts. He gains exactly what you lose. He is a thief, a con artist, a manipulator, and as much as we hate him, Cipolla makes a point that almost nobody appreciates. The bandit is rational. You can understand a bandit. His evil follows a logic. He wants something, and he hurts you to get it, which means you can predict him. You can defend against him. You can build a lock, hire a lawyer, lay a trap. The bandit operates inside the laws of self-interest, and self-interest is something the human mind knows how to fight. Then there is the helpless person, the one who harms himself while benefiting others, the perpetual sucker, the one who gets taken advantage of, who gives and ends up with nothing. And then there is the 4th, the one Cipolla spent the most ink on, the one he considered the single greatest threat to the human race. The stupid person causes losses to others while gaining nothing himself, sometimes while losing himself. He harms you for no reason, no profit, no plan, no motive you could ever reconstruct, because there isn't one. Sit with the strangeness of that. The bandit hurts you to feed himself, terrible but comprehensible. The stupid person hurts you and walks away with nothing in his hands. He has burned down your house and his own in the same fire, and if you asked him why, he could not tell you. This is why Cipolla called him more dangerous than a bandit, because there is no leverage against him. You cannot bribe him because he gains nothing. You cannot reason with him because his actions never followed reason in the first place. You cannot predict him because chaos has no pattern. The stupid person is the one variable in human affairs that intelligence cannot model, that explains your life. Cipolla didn't stop at the 4 boxes. He laid down 5 laws, and the first one is a trapdoor that opens right beneath your feet. Law 1. Always and inevitably, everyone underestimates the number of stupid individuals in circulation. No matter how many fools you think surround you, you are lowballing the count, every time. And the reason is subtle. We assume that certain markers, a degree, a title, a high salary, a confident voice, rule stupidity out. We see a surgeon, a professor, a senator, and our brain quietly files them under intelligent before they've said a word. This is the error that kills. Because Cipolla's second law states something that should genuinely frighten anyone who believes in meritocracy. The probability that a person is stupid is completely independent of every other characteristic they possess. Education does not lower it. Wealth does not lower it. Status does not lower it. The percentage of stupid people among university professors is the same as among construction workers. The same at the United Nations as at a gas station. One is stupid, Cipolla wrote, the way one is red-haired. It is distributed by nature, and nature does not consult your resume. Now hold that thought against the courtroom in Jerusalem. Eichmann was educated, organized, competent at logistics, by every superficial marker, an intelligent man. And he became, in Arendt's words, one of the greatest criminals of his era, not despite the thoughtlessness, but through it. The credentials were real, the thinking was gone, and the gap between those two things is exactly where the danger lives. You have been trained your whole life to look at the credential and assume the thinking. That assumption is the most expensive mistake your mind makes. The multiplier nobody saw coming. Here is where Cipolla's 1976 essay collides with the present, and the collision should leave a mark. Cipolla believed the ratio of thinkers to non-thinkers in a society was roughly fixed, a stable feature of human nature. The percentage of genuinely stupid people, he argued, stays constant across time and place. But he made one crucial caveat, and almost everyone skips it. He said a society's fate depends not on the stupid, whose numbers never change, but on the behavior of everyone else. A thriving civilization is one where the intelligent are numerous and active, working hard enough to offset the damage the stupid inevitably cause. A declining civilization has the same number of stupid people, but the intelligent have gone quiet, the helpless have multiplied, and worst of all, the bandits have started behaving stupidly too, causing damage that helps no one, not even themselves. Decline, in Cipolla's model, is not an increase in stupidity. It is a withdrawal of thinking by the people who were supposed to be doing it, and that is the part that turns his essay from a curiosity into a prophecy. Because something has happened in the last 15 years that Cipolla could never have predicted. A technology that doesn't make people stupider in the way he meant, but that quietly persuades the thinking class to stop thinking, to withdraw, to hand the work to a machine and walk away. We need to talk about what's actually happening inside your skull when you do that. The evidence begins. In January of 2025, a researcher named Michael Gerlich published a study in the journal Societies. He took 666 people across a wide range of ages and education levels, measured how much they relied on AI tools, and then measured their critical thinking ability. The relationship was not subtle. The heavier the AI use, the lower the critical thinking. And the mechanism connecting the two had a name: cognitive offloading. The habit of pushing a mental task onto an external tool so your own mind doesn't have to carry it. Now, offloading isn't new. We've done it forever. A grocery list offloads memory. A calculator offloads arithmetic. For most of history, this was a clean trade. You gave away a small mechanical task and freed your mind for bigger ones. But Gerlich found something darker in the data. The effect was strongest in the young. People between 17 and 25 showed the highest dependence and the steepest decline. The generation that grew up with these tools is the generation losing the most, and they're losing it before the thinking muscle ever fully formed. There is a phrase researchers in this field have started using: clinical and cold. They call it cognitive laziness, a measurable decline in the inclination to engage in deep, reflective thought. Not because you can't, but because something easier is always one tap away. And the brain, like water, takes the path of least resistance every single time. You are not deciding to stop thinking. You are being gently, frictionlessly relieved of the need to. The brain on the scan. But a survey is just self-report. People lie, especially to themselves. So let me show you what happened when researchers stopped asking people how they felt and started watching their brains directly. In 2025, a team at MIT's Media Lab, led by Natalia Kosmina, ran an experiment that should be taught in every school on Earth. They took 54 people and split them into 3 groups, all assigned to write essays. One group used ChatGPT. One group used a search engine. One group used nothing, just their own mind and a blank page. And while they wrote, the researchers recorded their brain activity with an EEG, watching electrical engagement across 32 regions of the skull. The results were stark. The group using AI showed the lowest brain engagement of the 3, the least neural activity, the weakest connectivity between regions. By nearly every measure, neural, linguistic, behavioral, they underperformed. Their brains, quite literally, did less. And it got worse. When researchers later asked the AI group to quote from the essays they had supposedly just written, many of them couldn't. They had produced the words. They had not produced the thoughts. The text passed through them like light through glass, leaving no trace, because at no point had their mind actually done the work of generating it. There is a name for the state where words pass through a person without engaging the mind behind them. Arendt named it in a courtroom 60 years ago. She watched a man speak fluently in borrowed phrases he had never examined, and she called it the absence of thought. The MIT researchers, with electrodes instead of intuition, watched the same thing happen inside a generation of essay writers, and the brain scan agreed with the philosopher. The fungus she warned about has found a faster way to spread: the confidence trap. Now we reach the most dangerous finding of all, because this one inverts everything you'd expect. In 2025, researchers from Microsoft and Carnegie Mellon University published a study of knowledge workers, professionals, the people we'd assume are the least vulnerable to this. They were looking at how AI affected critical thinking on the job. What they found was a vicious little loop. The workers who trusted the AI the most engaged in the least critical thinking. And the more confident a person felt in the machine's answer, the less they bothered to check it. Trust went up. Scrutiny went down. The exact inverse of what a healthy mind should do. Read that again. Not on the screen, just in your head. The people most confident in the tool were the people least likely to catch it when it was wrong. This is the trap closing. Because the thinking class, the intelligent in Cipolla's terms, the people a society depends on to offset its fools, is exactly the class most likely to adopt these tools, most likely to trust them, and therefore most likely to quietly stop doing the one thing that made them valuable. They don't get dumber in any way you could see. They keep their titles, their salaries, their confidence, but the engine underneath has been switched off, and they are now running on borrowed momentum. Cipolla said decline happens when the thinkers withdraw. He didn't know they'd withdraw willingly, gratefully, convinced they were upgrading. Why the group makes it worse. So far, we've talked about what happens to a single mind, but Cipolla's real warning was about the collective, about what happens when these individual failures fuse into something larger. And to understand that, we have to go back to 1951, to a deceptively simple experiment about lines on a card. A psychologist named Solomon Asch sat a man at a table with 7 other people and showed them all a simple image, 1 reference line and 3 comparison lines of obviously different lengths. The task was trivial. Which comparison line matches the reference? A child could do it. The answer was never in doubt, except the 7 other people were actors. And on certain rounds, they all confidently gave the same wrong answer. The real subject sat there, second to last, watching person after person calmly state something his own eyes told him was false. What happened next is one of the most important facts ever discovered about human beings. Roughly a third of the time, the real subject agreed with the wrong answer. Across the whole experiment, the majority of subjects caved at least once, denying the plain evidence of their own vision rather than stand alone against a confident group. Asch was shaken. He wrote that the tendency to conform was so strong that intelligent, well-meaning young people were willing to call white black. Now layer this on top of everything we've just established. You have a generation whose independent thinking is measurably weakening. You have a thinking class that's quietly outsourcing its judgment to a machine. And now add the oldest force in human psychology, the desperate bone-deep pull to agree with whatever the group has already decided. A weak individual mind, surrounded by a confident consensus, does not resist. It folds. The one who broke the spell. But Asch found something else in that experiment, and this is the detail almost nobody remembers, the one that matters most for you personally. When even a single one of the actors broke ranks, when just one person in that room gave the correct answer out loud, the spell shattered. Conformity collapsed. The rate of people caving to the group dropped from a third all the way down to 5 or 10%. One dissenting voice. That was all it took. Not a movement. Not a majority. One person, willing to say the obvious true thing while everyone else said the comfortable false thing, gave everyone else permission to trust their own eyes again. This is the entire hinge of the matter. Cipolla's intelligent person, Arendt's thinker, Asch's lone dissenter. They are the same figure wearing 3 different costumes. The one who keeps the mental engine running while everyone around them lets theirs idle. And the terrifying thing about an age of cognitive offloading is not that it creates more stupid people. Cipolla told us their number never changes. It's that it thins out the dissenters. It makes the lone voice rarer. It quietly removes the one person in the room who would have said, "Wait, look again." That's wrong. Because that person was usually the one doing the most thinking. And thinking is exactly what's being offloaded. The memory you never made. Let me show you how deep this goes, because it didn't start with AI. We've been training for this surrender for over a decade. In 2011, a researcher named Betsy Sparrow ran a study that became known as the Google effect. She found that when people expected to have easy future access to information, they didn't bother to remember the information itself. Instead, they remembered where to find it. The brain, sensing that a fact was stored externally, quietly declined to store it internally. We stopped remembering things. We started remembering the location of things. For a while, that seemed harmless. Why memorize a phone number when your phone holds it? Why retain a fact when a search bar holds it? The trade felt free. But here is what the offloading hid from us. Memory is not a warehouse. It is the raw material of thought. You cannot connect 2 ideas you do not hold in your mind at the same time. You cannot notice that something is wrong if you have no internal store of what right looks like. Insight, the actual spark of intelligence, happens when facts collide inside a single skull. Empty the skull and the collisions stop. We spent a decade outsourcing memory. Now we're outsourcing reasoning itself. And reasoning was the last thing we had left that the machine couldn't touch. The calculator took our arithmetic. The GPS took our sense of direction. Search took our memory. And now, for the first time, the tool is reaching for the one function that separated thinking from mere processing. The capacity to weigh, to doubt, to judge, to decide that something does not add up. That capacity has never been outsourced before in human history. We are the first generation running the experiment. and we are running it on our own children. The comfort of not knowing. There's a psychological reason this feels so good, so frictionless that we barely notice it happening, and it connects back to a concept you've probably heard misused 100 times, the Dunning-Kruger effect. Most people think Dunning-Kruger just means stupid people are confident. That's the lazy version. The real finding from David Dunning and Justin Kruger in 1999 is stranger and more unsettling. They discovered that the skills you need to be good at something are the exact same skills you need to recognize that you're bad at it. The incompetent person cannot see their own incompetence, because seeing it would require the very competence they lack. Now apply that to a mind that has offloaded its thinking. When you let a machine reason for you, you don't just lose the ability to reason, you lose the ability to notice that you've lost it. The decline erases the instrument that would have measured the decline. You feel sharper than ever because the AI's polished answer feels like your own intelligence. You mistake access for understanding. You mistake the machine's fluency for your own. This is the quietest horror in the whole picture. The person whose thinking is dissolving feels, from the inside, like a genius. They have a confident answer to everything. They've never felt more capable. The confidence and the competence have come completely unbolted from each other. And there is no internal alarm, because the alarm itself was made of the thing that's gone. Arendt's clerk in the glass booth felt no horror at himself either. He thought he had done his job well. That is what thoughtlessness feels like from the inside. It feels like competence. It always has. The collective mind goes dark. In 1972, a psychologist named Irving Janis gave a name to what happens when this individual failure becomes a group's operating system. He called it groupthink. Janis studied disasters, real ones, made by rooms full of intelligent, credentialed, powerful people who collectively made catastrophic decisions that any one of them alone might have questioned. He found that when a group prizes harmony and consensus over honest evaluation, something predictable happens. Doubts go unspoken. Dissent gets quietly punished. The group develops an illusion of unanimity, and that illusion becomes its own evidence. Everyone agrees, so it must be right. The members aren't stupid. Individually, many are brilliant, but the group, as a unit, stops thinking. It optimizes for agreement instead of accuracy, and it walks, in lockstep and full of confidence, straight off a cliff that a single dissenting voice could have pointed out. Now assemble the full machine. Individual minds weakened by offloading. A thinking class that's outsourced its judgment and trusts the tool more the less it checks. The ancient pull toward conformity that makes us deny our own eyes to match the group. The Dunning-Kruger blindness that hides the decline from the very people experiencing it. And groupthink, the structure that takes all of these failures and fuses them into a collective that is confidently, harmoniously wrong. This is what Cipolla saw coming, dimly, in 1976. Not a world of more stupid people. He was clear that their number is fixed. A world where the non-stupid stop offsetting them, where the thinkers withdraw, the dissenters fall silent, and the machinery that once caught error before it spread quietly goes dark. Stupidity, in Cipolla's framework, was never really about intelligence. It was about thinking that isn't happening. And we have just built the most powerful tool ever invented for making thinking not happen. And we hand it to our children and call it progress. The exit. So what do you do with this? Not delete the tools. That's a fantasy, and it isn't even the point. The calculator didn't make us worse at the math that mattered. Long division was never the math that mattered. The danger was never the tool. It was the withdrawal. The moment you stop checking, stop doubting, stop running the engine because something else will run it for you. The defense is almost embarrassingly simple and almost impossibly hard to actually do. Friction. Deliberate, chosen friction. Before you reach for the machine, sit for 10 seconds with the problem yourself. Form your own answer first. A rough one, a wrong one, it doesn't matter. Then check it against the tool. Notice the gap. That gap is where thinking lives. When the AI hands you an answer, treat it the way Ash's lone dissenter treated the confident room. Assume it might be wrong, and look again with your own eyes. When you feel that warm rush of confidence in something you didn't actually reason through, that is the exact moment to get suspicious, because confidence without effort is the signature of the trap. You are not trying to beat the machine. You're trying to remain the kind of person who can still tell when it's wrong. Because that person, Cipolla's intelligent one, Arendt's thinker, the single voice in Ash's room who said no. Look, that person was never common. The whole tragedy of Cipolla's essay is how rare genuine thinking has always been, how much of civilization rests on the thin minority who actually do it, and how easily that minority can thin out to nothing while everyone congratulates themselves on how advanced they've become. The stupid, Cipolla said, will always be with us. Their number never changes. The only question, the one that decides whether a civilization rises or rots, is how many people are still willing to think alongside them, to stay awake in a room that's drifting to sleep, to be the friction in a world engineered more perfectly every day for the smooth and frictionless surrender of the mind. That has always been a choice,